Getting stuck on the roads in the middle of winter is one of the worst things you can have happen. I'm Andrew with SHTF Honey Badger, and today I'm going to be going over some basic steps to prepare your vehicle for winter and what happens if you end up stranded or stuck somewhere in your vehicle. The first thing that I want to bring up, and I would say this is by far the easiest thing to do, but one of the most essential, is always keep your gas tank at least half full. If you're stuck somewhere, you want to be able to keep your vehicle running enough to make sure you're still able to have heat in the vehicle, especially when it gets extremely cold and frigid. Those vehicles can cool down real fast inside. So making sure you keep your gas tank at least half full, it's going to help you deal with unanticipated circumstances. So for example, you're driving and get stuck somewhere in a snowbank and you may have to wait a while for help. You're not sitting there with your gas light on hoping it lasts until a tow truck or a friend shows up, or have to maybe even sit there overnight if, say, for example, you're in a very inclement weather situation and maybe help can't reach you right away. So keeping your gas tank half full is probably the easiest but biggest thing that we're going to tell you to do as part of these preps. The next thing that I'd always recommend is keeping a shovel in your car or your truck. A shovel like this, which is just a folding military shovel, they're relatively easy and cheap to get. I would make sure you do get one of the higher quality ones though. Even a high quality shovel like this is going to be in the $40 to $50 range. So skip over those $10, $15 ones, jump up to one of those. That's still relatively cheap in the grand scheme of things, but they're gonna help you be able to dig yourself out if something happens. And that's the big thing with these. The last thing you wanna do is be out there trying to shovel snow around from your tires, or trying to dig out under your vehicle to get to a recovery point with your hands. Having a shovel for that's a great advantage. And if you get a folding style, this one has a fixed handle with a folding blade, but they have ones where the handles even fold up more. They can get relatively compact. They're easy to store under a seat or throw somewhere in a bag where it's out of the way. And if you need it, you have it. And it's something you're going to be really happy you have if it comes to a point where you need to start digging some snow or something like that. The next thing that I want to bring up is making sure you actually have a recovery strap and you know where the recovery points are on your vehicle. So recovery strap like this is just a basic one you can get at a hardware store. They run about $20 to $30 range. You can get some really nice off-road ones and those can run up into several $100s. But for most people, just the basic hardware strap, it's going to work great. Just make sure that you're buying one that is able to do the weight rating for your vehicle and then some. Step up one level above what the weight rating you probably need for your vehicle is. And that way you're going to ensure no matter what happens, you have a strap that can handle your vehicle. And even if you don't have a truck, if you're driving around in a car, it's always a good idea to have one of these. Because in the end, if you get stuck and you do have somebody show up with a truck and they don't have one, well, you have one you guys can use. And again, to tack onto that is definitely make sure you know where your recovery points are. Some cars actually have hooks underneath them in the frame that you can hook onto if you need to. Some of them have actual tow hooks on the front or back. Some of them don't have any and you just have to find where the secure spot is on your frame that you can hook onto and kind of make it work. So I would make sure that you have a good idea where those points are. The last thing you want to do is be digging around under your vehicle, trying to find those straps when you're stuck in a snowbank if you have someone to actually help pull you out. So find those recovery points, know where they are in advance, and have a strap, because even if you're not going to be pulling somebody out with it, someone might need it to pull you out, and it's just worth it for that $20 to $30 to get one. Now, the next item I want you to consider having, and that I think would be a great thing to have as part of your vehicle preps, is going to be tools. So these can vary a little bit on what you have, but a decent mechanic set runs about $100, like this DeWalt set right here. I think these were $89.99 at Costco last year. So you can find sets like these around $100 price range at Costco or Home Depot, and they're going to come with a whole bunch of different sockets, a whole bunch of different wrenches. Usually they come with a multi-tip screwdriver as well that you can swap around to different bits. That's going to allow you to do a lot of repairs in the field if you have to. You can do stuff like even tighten battery terminals, and things like that with these kits. So, they can use them for really basic stuff. You may not need one as big as this guy right here, but if you have a little bit extra cash, I'd step up to a bigger one like this and just toss it in your vehicle. And even if you never need it, it's good to have it there, because if you never need it, the reality is you will. Or somebody else might need it and you have those tools handy, and there you go. Another item with tools as well is going to be having an electric impact if you have the money. So for those of you a little bit more mechanically inclined, or a DIYer type person, These are going to save you a lot of effort, especially if it's freezing cold out and you have to change a tire. This is a godsend. Having this and having some batteries with it and just swapping the batteries out every so often in the vehicle to keep them charged is going to be a huge advantage, because the last thing you want to do if you slide into a curb when it's icy and cold out is have to spend 45 minutes with a four-way over here trying to make sure you get your tire off and get your lug nuts back on, when an electric impact like this is something that's going to get it done in 5 minutes. So electric impact, sockets that go with it, I would even recommend, depending on where you are, maybe having a fuller socket set and carrying a full set of impact sockets beyond just the one for your vehicle, because you never know what's going to happen. If a friend calls you up, they may have some different size lug nuts, and then you can use that impact to help them out too if you go help them out. At a minimum though, the four-way is not a great way to change a tire versus this, but I would still recommend having a four-way at least over the standard deals that come in your car. They just are not very user-friendly when it comes to trying to change a tire, and a four-way is still going to be a lot easier than using the little bars that come with it. But again, if you have the money, especially if you're already in a tool line, most of them have some version of an electric impact. Pick it up, have it with you. It's going to make your life so much easier if something happens and you get stuck out there trying to change a tire in the snow. The next item that I want to throw out here is going to be a jump box. So with a jump box, I don't have one on the table in front of me. I actually have mine over there charging right now. It's something that's going to allow you to actually jump your vehicle if the battery dies, because let's face it, when it's cold, batteries are more likely to die. So that jump box is something you can have with you. You can hook it up and don't need a second vehicle there. And in most instances, you're going to be able to jump start your vehicle unless it is extremely dead. Tacking onto that, I would definitely make sure you keep jumper cables still as well. They're definitely going to be the preferred method if there's another vehicle to jump off of. But if you don't have that other vehicle to jump off of, a jump box is going to be a huge advantage. Another side note with those jump boxes is most of them have USB ports or a 12-volt adapter that you can plug into to keep a phone charged. So if you are on the side of the road and something else went wrong and you don't want to keep running the vehicle if you don't have to save some gas, you can actually plug your phone into that battery bank to keep it charged so you can keep communicating with people. So that's another big advantage of having those jump boxes. Most of them also have a built-in little air compressor, so depending on the situation, you may be able to air a tire back up if you've lost some tire pressure. It's only really a temporary fix, but it's another advantage to having those little jump boxes with you. Again, they're relatively cheap as well, and they come in really handy when you actually have it with you. One thing I want to tack on with those jump boxes as well, since I did mention tire inflation, is make sure you do have your tires properly inflated for the winter. Make sure they're not super low and getting to a point where you could accidentally damage the sidewalls of the tire because they're too low, because tire pressure does tend to drop when it gets cold out. And make sure that you're not over pressurizing them either, as that can actually cause your vehicle to start slipping in wet and icy conditions a little bit easier. So tire pressure is a big one, and also make sure you're checking your spare tire pressure. Last thing you want to do is if you slide into a curb and pop your tire, go to change it out with your spare and find out your spare tire is flat. So check your tire pressures and check your spare tire as well while you're at it. Next thing I want to tack on here is going to be a flashlight. So again, this is something that I feel like in every video I mentioned about emergency supplies, I probably beat to death like a dead horse. But a flashlight is always something you want to have. I recommend carrying at least a couple, to be blunt, because 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So a great option is to have a work light like this, run off the same batteries of the impact I carry, and you're going to be able to have this run for quite a while off one of these 5-amp batteries. But at the same time, if you need to, you can pop it off and use it on the impact in a pinch, and vice versa. If you don't need the impact but you need more light, you can pop the battery off the impact and use it on the light to keep your light running longer. But having a light like this is great to have with your tools. But a standalone flashlight as well, and some backup batteries for it, or even a headlamp would be ideal in some situations, would be great to have. Next thing I'm going to throw out there is having some road flares or some glow sticks. Road flares are great because they are going to create visibility a lot. So if you are stuck on the side of the road and you're trying to get some attention, having a road flare out there is going to help a lot, especially as well as keeping vehicles from potentially rear-ending you if you're stuck out somewhere. Throwing some road flares out, you can throw them a couple hundred feet down the road from your vehicle, and drivers will see those from a ways out. The only downside of the road flares is they do have a pretty limited lifespan. So it depends on the versions you get out there, but you know, you do have some of them that last up to about 2 hours, but the majority are about 15 to 20 minutes burning for road flares. That's where kind of the glow sticks come in. A glow stick can last, you know, 8 to 12 hours. That's going to be really huge if you're stuck somewhere and say it's snowing heavily. You can take one of these out here, pop them, and then tie it somewhere with a little piece of cord. Most of these actually come with cord, but tie it up somewhere like an antenna on your vehicle as high up as possible. That way, even as your vehicle becomes covered in snow, it's going to be more obscured for people to see. If somebody like a rescue crew's out there and you're stuck in more remote areas, they may be able to see that glow stick, especially if you have it higher up, and especially if it's dark, going to stick out there quite a bit, even if your vehicle is mostly snow covered. So that's another thing. Road flares, glow sticks, two great things to have. I'll throw this in there with those as well, and that's going to be a reflective vest. I always carry one on my driver's side door. It's great to have during all conditions, to be honest, because anytime you got to get out of a vehicle at night, you want to make sure people can see you. But especially if you're out there in the winter, you're changing tires, it's snowy conditions, that reflective vest is probably going to stick out there just a little bit more than a winter coat, and that's going to be a huge advantage if you're trying not to get hit by a car. So reflective vest or something I would also add into your preps with this. Moving forward, the next thing that I want to throw in there is going to be a first aid kit, which we've already touched over in some other videos, and emergency blankets, which I touched on them a little bit, but I want to emphasize them a little bit more here because it's going to be a huge advantage. Those emergency blankets can reflect up to 90% of your body heat back towards you when you're wrapped up in one of them, and these are cheap. An emergency blanket like this comes in a relatively compact package. There are some that actually come in smaller packages than this. This is just the one I happen to carry with me in my truck I grabbed to show you. But if you wrap up in one of these when you're cold and your vehicle ain't running or you're trying to stay warm, especially if you're already layered up, it'll help reflect that body heat back towards you, and that's going to help you keep warmer. And keeping warm when you have that risk hypothermia coming in is vital. It's going to help you last a lot longer out there while you're waiting for help or while you're waiting for some weather to pass before you can try to more self-rescue in conditions that are more ideal. So emergency blankets are a big plus to have with you, and again, they're cheap and easy to carry, so make sure you have them with you. Next thing I want to throw out there is going to be food and water. Now, realistically, for prepping your vehicle for winter conditions, it's not something where you're probably going to need weeks worth of food and water. You're going to want at least a day or two though. Just because, again, you never know what's going to happen. We've seen instances even in more suburban to urban areas where people have gotten snowed in their vehicles on interstates and highway systems, and they've been stuck there for, you know, about 24 to 36 hours. It happens. So when it comes to this section, I wouldn't really recommend jumping into something like freeze-dried food, as freeze-dried food is something you actually need to be able to prepare, and it can be a little intensive with water, and then you have to have a way to cook it. I think the simplest solution for stuff is actually things like trail mix. You know, a bag of trail mix here like this size, it's going to have 60 servings in it, and it's 160 calories a serving. That's enough trail mix that it's going to be able to last you a couple days relatively easily. Now, it's not going to be great eating trail mix the entire time, but it's going to at least keep you sustained. Same thing if you use stuff like protein bars. If you do use protein bars, make sure you find some that aren't going to freeze hard as a rock if it gets cold. But things like trail mix and protein bars in your vehicle are probably going to be your best option for prepping for winter, because you really don't have to worry about them freezing as much, and they're not something you have to prepare. Another item that you do want to have with you as well is water. Personally, I always carry a blender bottle or two of water with me. It's something I just throw in my bag and I have with me, or I throw a couple of them in the cup holders in my truck anytime I'm really going out and about, because it's just easier to have these. It stops you from stopping at a gas station to grab stuff. But more importantly, if something happens, I already have water with me. It's good to also keep some bottles of water in your vehicle. I keep a couple in mine, but you do risk having those freeze, especially when it gets really cold out. That's why I'm mostly a fan of carrying stuff like this, though, that you just bring in and out of the vehicle with you. Make sure it's something you just consistently grab, and then you're going to have some water accessible for you if you need it. Another thing I want to bring up about prepping your vehicle for winter, but it's also going to be even more of a general rule, is going to be having layers available. So that's going to either be dressing in layers yourself, so, you know, wearing your normal clothes but having several layers that you can put on and take off. And that's going to be really vital. You know, layers are the most important thing on regulating your body temperature. Just having a thick winter coat that you take on and off really can be an issue because you may get too hot and actually start sweating in that. But then you're taking it off and you're losing all your insulating factor and you're going to be freezing. So dressing in layers, it allows you to add and remove layers as needed. So having things like extra hoodies, like what I have up here with you, is good. Even having actually long johns with you in your vehicle would be good because, you know, when something first happens and your vehicle's still nice and toasty, you can always switch out, throw these guys on. And then if you lose heat later, you can't keep running your heater, you have some extra layers on to move forward. So definitely have some layers with you. Keep them in your vehicle if you're not wearing them on your person. And remember, it's always okay to put layers on and off, but it's a lot better than having that one coat that you can't take on and off consistently to regulate your temperature. Another item I want to throw in there as well, separate from layers, would be gloves, especially gloves that you can actually work in. When it's cold out, if you have to hook up straps to a vehicle or you're running around having to change a tire, you want to have your hands protected, especially from the elements. So items like even mechanics gloves here, they're going to be good for that. They're not very well insulating, but it is thick enough that it's going to keep you from having you know, damage to your finger, especially from frostbite, too quick. They do have insulated versions. Now the insulated versions for, like, say, the mechanics gloves or Under Armour gloves or so forth, you do lose some of that ability with your fingertips to manipulate stuff. So keep that in mind when you are moving up the thicker gloves. That's why I do like some thinner ones better, like these, especially because I'm not planning on having my hands and waving them around a bunch. If I'm at a point where I'm not actually manipulating anything outside the vehicle, they're probably already going to be in some pockets just to help keep them warm. But gloves would be a vital thing to have out there if you have to be working on a vehicle when it's cold, or you have to be out there in that weather dealing with things like, again, changing a tire, hooking up a strap. And the final item that I want to bring up that I'd really stress everybody have, and it's a funny item, but, you know, as much people joke about these sometimes, it's really going to be important, would be ice grips like these. So these are something that are actually available at most hardware stores, but they are lifesavers. I can tell you that from personal experience. Regardless of what you're wearing for footwear, you know, with the exception of maybe like sandals or high heels, you can strap these onto the bottom. So if you're wearing boots, which especially in the winter, boots are probably the thing you want to go with if you can, or you're wearing tennis shoes, sneakers, you're wearing Jordans, etc., you can literally slap these on the bottom and they're going to give you these little ice picks down here. And these little guys stab right into the ice when you're walking on them. Now, it doesn't guarantee you won't slip, but it makes you gaining traction in snow and icy conditions in particular a lot easier. And if you're working out there on the side of the road on a vehicle, or you have to walk somewhere to get help, you don't want to be slipping and falling on your butt and breaking bones, or slipping and falling into a ravine or anything crazy like that walking along the road if you have to. So get these and throw them on your shoes if you have to get out of your vehicle to do some stuff. You know, again, people might give you a little bit of grief about it. You know, you might think it's funny watching this video that I'm bringing these up there, but it's not so funny if you're laying there with a broken leg or a broken hip because you slipped in the ice because you're too stubborn to put these guys on. So looking at it, that is what I'm talking about today. That's kind of what I have for you and what I would recommend you consider when you're getting ready for winter and you're prepping your vehicle for something happens. So tell me down in the comments below. What do you think? What items, particularly today, do you feel that I should have added in here and that other people should have it in that I didn't cover? Or is there anything that I personally carry with me that you think is unnecessary or that you personally wouldn't? Just let us know, and if you don't mind as well, hit that like and subscribe button on the way out. We appreciate it for the channel. But most importantly, stay prepared and stay safe.